There's a specific kind of quiet in a planned subdivision. It's not peace, it's a standoff. Everyone is waiting for someone else to leave their trash cans out an hour too long. I thought we were safe on our own driveway. I thought my 9-year-old son selling lemonade for 50 cents a cup was immune to the neighborhood watch. I was wrong. Brenda called the cops on my kid. She just didn't expect the chief of police to answer the radio. We moved to Red Creek Estates because of the schools. That's the lie every parent tells themselves when they sign a 30-year mortgage for a house that looks exactly like the one next door, painted in one of 4 HOA-approved shades of beige. You trade your soul for a decent math program and a community pool. I'm a pragmatist. I knew what I was signing up for. I knew about the homeowners association. I knew I'd get a passive-aggressive letter if my grass crept a quarter-inch past the sidewalk line. I just didn't realize that the people enforcing these rules didn't view them as guidelines for a tidy neighborhood, but as a holy text. It was mid-July. The kind of oppressive, suffocating heat that turns the asphalt into a frying pan and makes the air shimmer above the cars parked in the driveways. Duty. My son Leo was 9. He was in that golden, fleeting window of childhood where the world still makes sense, where effort equals reward, and where $100 feels like $1 million. Leo wanted a telescope, not a cheap plastic one, but a serious piece of hardware he'd seen in a catalog. One that could show him the rings of Saturn. I could have bought it for him. I probably should have. But I wanted him to understand the weight of money. I wanted him to earn it. "Dad," he had said that morning, standing in the kitchen in his oversized pajamas, his hair sticking up in sweaty spikes. "It's going to be 98 degrees today. It's peak hydration weather." "Peak hydration weather?" I asked, pouring my first cup of coffee. "I heard it on the news," he said, deadpan. "People are going to be thirsty. I want to set up a stand." I looked out the window. The neighborhood was dead. The smart people were inside, clustered around their air conditioning vents. But looking at Leo's face, earnest, flushed with entrepreneurial zeal, I couldn't say no. We spent the next 2 hours prepping. We dragged an old card table out of the garage. It had a wobbly leg, which we fixed with a folded piece of cardboard. We used my wife's good Sharpies to draw a massive, crooked sign on a piece of poster board. "Ice cold lemonade, 50 cents. Tips appreciated. For Saturn." Then came the product. We didn't use a powder mix. Leo was a purist. We squeezed actual lemons until our hands cramped and stung from paper cuts. We boiled water to make simple syrup. We filled 2 massive plastic pitchers with ice, lemon slices, and a frankly alarming amount of sugar. By 11 o'clock, the stand was operational at the end of our driveway. I sat in a canvas folding chair a few feet away, holding a book I wasn't reading, watching the sweat bead on my kid's forehead. For the first hour, it was mostly pity purchases. The mailman, a guy named Rick, who looked like he wanted to die in the humidity, bought 2 cups and left a $1 tip. A couple of teenagers on electric scooters stopped, pooled their dimes, and drank the lemonade in one gulp. Leo was ecstatic. He had a little plastic cigar box he used as a cash register, and every time coins hit the bottom, he beamed. It was innocent. It was Norman Rockwell painted on a canvas of melting suburban asphalt. Then the clipboard appeared. I saw her coming from 3 houses down. Brenda. Every HOA has a Brenda. She was the president of the Red Creek Estates Board of Directors. She wore khaki capris, sensible orthopedic walking sandals, and a white visor that shielded her eyes from the sun but couldn't hide the permanent, sour pinch of her mouth. She carried a clipboard with a metal clip that gleamed like a weapon. Brenda didn't walk. She patrolled. I felt my stomach tighten. I put my book down. "Morning, Brenda," I called out, trying to strike a tone of breezy neighborliness. If you acted like there was no problem, sometimes she got confused and moved on. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were locked on the folding table, the sign, and the plastic pitchers. She stopped precisely where my driveway met the public sidewalk, her toes flirting with the property line. "Hello, Tom," she said. Her voice was thin and reedy, like air escaping a punctured tire. She finally turned her gaze to Leo. Leo smiled, holding up a plastic cup. "Hi, Mrs. Brenda. Do you want some lemonade? It's peak hydration weather." Brenda did not smile back. She raised a pen and tapped it against her clipboard. Tap, tap, tap. Are you aware, she said, looking back at me, that you are operating an unlicensed commercial enterprise on residential property? I blinked. I actually looked around for a second, as if checking to see if a food truck had parked on my lawn without me noticing. Brenda, it's a lemonade stand. He's 9. The bylaws, she said, her voice dropping an octave, taking on the reverent tone of a priest quoting scripture, do not specify age exemptions for commercial activity. Section 4, paragraph B clearly states that no business, trade, or commercial operation shall be conducted upon any lot. I let out a harsh breath, wiping sweat from my forehead. He's not opening a Starbucks, Brenda. He's trying to buy a telescope. He's been out here for an hour and made $4. I think the neighborhood property values will survive. Rules are not suggestions, Tom, she snapped. The pen tapped faster. If we allow this, what's next? People running auto repair shops out of their garages? Flea markets on the front lawns. It's a slippery slope. Not to mention you don't have a health department permit to serve unsealed beverages to the public. You are exposing the HOA to massive liability. I looked at Leo. His smile had vanished. His hands were gripping the edge of the card table, his knuckles turning white. He looked between me and Brenda, sensing the hostility, processing the fact that an adult was treating his cardboard sign like a crime scene. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud break, it was a quiet, deep fracture. I was tired of the beige houses. I was tired of the passive-aggressive emails about the color of my porch light. And I was absolutely furious that this miserable woman was trying to crush my son's Saturday over 50 cents a cup. Brenda, I said, keeping my voice dangerously level. I stood up from my folding chair. Get off my driveway. Brenda took a half step back, her eyes widening behind her rimless glasses. People in Red Creek Estates didn't talk to her like that. We were all cowed by the threat of lines and fines. We grumbled behind closed doors, but smiled to her face. Excuse me, she sputtered. You're standing on my driveway. The sidewalk is public property. You can stand there, but you are currently trespassing on my lot. She puffed up her chest, her face turning a mottled shade of red that clashed violently with her pink polo shirt. I am the president of the HOA. I have the right to inspect properties for compliance. You inspected it, I said, walking over to stand next to Leo. I put a hand on my boy's shoulder. He was trembling slightly. And now you can leave. Brenda's pen hovered over her clipboard. She clicked it furiously. I am writing you a citation, Tom. A formal warning. You have exactly 15 minutes to dismantle this hazard. If it is not removed by then, you will be fined $50. Write it, I said. Leo looked up at me, his brown eyes wide with panic. Dad, are we in trouble? We can pack it up. I don't need the telescope. Hearing his voice crack did it if I had any lingering thoughts of just folding the table and retreating into the air conditioning. To keep the peace, they evaporated. We're not packing anything up, buddy, I told him gently. I turned my glare back to Brenda. We're going to stay out here until the ice melts. Go write your little ticket, Brenda. She scribbled aggressively on a piece of pink carbon paper, tore it off with a sharp rip, and slapped it down onto the folding table, right next to the plastic cigar box. 15 minutes, she hissed, or the fine doubles, and if you refuse to comply, I will be forced to contact the authorities. We take health and safety seriously here. She spun on her heel and marched away, the rubber soles of her sandals squeaking against the hot concrete. I picked up the pink slip. It was covered in her spidery, frantic handwriting. Violation, unauthorized commercial structure. Health code breach, unlicensed food service. Immediate remediation required. I crumpled it up and tossed it into the empty trash bag we had tied to the leg of the table. Dad, Leo whispered. She said the authorities. Does she mean the police? I knelt down so I was at eye level with him. Leo, listen to me. The police have real crimes to fight. They catch bad guys. They do not care about lemonade stands. She's bluffing to scare us. She wants us to be afraid. Are we afraid? He hesitated, looking down the street, where Brenda was now pacing in front of her own house, phone pressed to her ear. A little bit, he admitted. Me too, I lied. But sometimes you have to stand your ground. You made a good product. You're working hard. There is nothing illegal about what you're doing. Do you want to keep selling? He looked at the pitcher. It was still 2/3 full, condensation dripping down the plastic sides. He looked at the cigar box. Then he nodded. I want to keep selling. Good man. The next 20 minutes were agonizing. The psychological warfare of the suburbs is a slow burn. Brenda didn't go inside. She stood on her perfectly manicured lawn, a few houses down, staring at us. She was holding her phone, talking animatedly, occasionally pointing in our direction. Word must have spread through the neighborhood text chain. The street, previously deserted, suddenly saw a trickle of foot traffic. Our next-door neighbor, a guy named Dave, who worked in finance and avoided eye contact on a good day, came walking his golden retriever. The dog was panting heavily. Dave stopped at the edge of the driveway, looking nervously down the street toward Brenda, then back to us. Hey, Tom, Dave muttered. Hot one today. Sure is, Dave, I said. Dave looked at the lemonade stand. He looked at Leo. He pulled a crumpled $5 bill from his gym shorts. Give me a cup, kid. Keep the change. Wow, thank you. Leo scrambled to pour the drink, spilling a little on the cardboard sign. He handed it over carefully. Dave took a sip, nodded, and then practically sprinted back toward his house, not wanting to be caught in the crossfire. It was a cowardly act of rebellion, but I appreciated it. 2 more neighbors drove past. One slowed down, gave me a subtle thumbs up from behind the steering wheel, and kept going. The other, an older woman who served on the HOA board with Brenda, rolled her window up tightly and sped past, looking straight ahead. It was ridiculous. The whole thing was absurd. We were sitting on a driveway in the middle of America, selling sugar water, and you would have thought we were running a cartel. I checked my watch. 25 minutes had passed since Brenda delivered her ultimatum. See, I told Leo, wiping a bead of sweat from my chin. Nothing happened. She was just blowing smoke. Dad, Leo said, his voice dropping to a whisper. He pointed a sticky finger down the street. I turned my head. Turning onto our block was a white Ford Explorer. It didn't have its lights or sirens on, but the heavy push bar on the front grille and the bold blue lettering on the side were unmistakable. Red Creek Police Department. My stomach dropped into my shoes. She actually did it. She called the police. And they actually came. The cruiser crawled down the street at a funeral pace. The heavy tires chewed over the hot asphalt with a gritty, sticky sound. I felt a cold spike of genuine panic pierce through my stubbornness. I am a white-collar guy. I pay my taxes. I don't speed in school zones. My interactions with law enforcement consisted of a single parking ticket in 2014. Watching a police vehicle deliberately stop in front of my house, blocking my driveway, sent a primal, instinctual flare of adrenaline through my nervous system. I looked at Leo. The color had completely drained from his face. He looked like he was about to throw up. He stepped back from the table, hiding slightly behind my leg. It's okay, Leo, I said softly, forcing my voice to remain steady. I'm right here. Let me do the talking. The engine idled for a moment before shutting off. The driver's side door clicked open. Out stepped a man who looked like he had been poured into his uniform. He was tall, thick through the chest, with a graying mustache and eyes hidden behind dark aviator sunglasses. The brass on his collar glinted violently in the sun. It wasn't just a patrol officer. The badge on his chest read, Chief Miller. My mind raced. Why the chief of police? Was it a slow day? Or did Brenda have some sort of direct line to the brass? She was the HOA president. She schmoozed with local politicians all the time. She probably bypassed dispatch entirely. Before Chief Miller could even close his car door, I heard the rapid, squeaking approach of Brenda's sandals. She had practically jogged down the street from her vantage point. Chief Miller, Greg, she called out, breathless, her face flushed with victory. She arrived at the bumper of the police SUV, pointing her clipboard at me like a bayonet. Thank God you're here. I called 20 minutes ago. Chief Miller slowly shut the heavy door of his cruiser. He rested one hand on his utility belt, not touching his weapon, just letting his thumb hook into the leather. He didn't look at Brenda right away. He looked at me. Then he looked at Leo. Then he looked at the cardboard sign that said, "Tips appreciated," for Saturn. "Brenda," the chief said. His voice was like gravel rolling down a tin roof, deep, exhausted, and incredibly dry. I was in the middle of my lunch break. Dispatch forwarded me a call about and I quote, "public health hazard and unpermitted commercial structure causing a public disturbance." "Is this the disturbance?" "Yes." Brenda stepped forward, emboldened. "He was warned. I issued a formal citation. He refused to comply. The bylaws are very clear, Greg. No commercial businesses. They are selling unsealed food items. We have no idea if their kitchen is sanitary. What if someone gets salmonella? The HOA could be sued. You need to shut this down and issue a municipal fine." I stepped forward. "Officer, Chief, I'm Tom. This is my son, Leo. He's 9. He's trying to make a few bucks for a telescope. We've been here 2 hours. Brenda scoffed loudly. "Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. I don't care if he's 9 or 90. The rules keep this neighborhood from descending into anarchy." Chief Miller reached up and slowly pulled his aviator sunglasses off his face. He had deep bags under his eyes. He looked like a man who had seen the darkest parts of humanity and was currently questioning why he hadn't just retired to go fishing. He looked at Brenda. "Brenda, do you know what we had on the south side this morning? We had a 3-car pileup on the interstate. We have 2 officers out with the flu. I have a stack of paperwork on my desk tall enough to cast a shadow." "I am a taxpayer, Greg," Brenda said, her voice tightening. She realized she wasn't getting the immediate compliance she expected, and she didn't like it. "And as HOA president, I have a duty to—" "Your duty," Chief Miller interrupted, stepping away from the car and walking up my driveway, "is to manage the neighborhood pool and make sure nobody paints their house neon pink." He walked right past her, his heavy black boots thudding on the concrete. He walked up to the folding table. Leo shrunk back further, gripping the back of my shorts. Chief Miller looked down at the plastic pitcher. The ice was mostly melted, but condensation still coated the outside. He looked at the cigar box, which had maybe $8 in it. Then he looked down at Leo. The silence was suffocating. I could hear a lawnmower running a block away. I could hear Brenda's agitated breathing behind us. Chief Miller squatted down so he was eye level with my son. The leather of his duty belt creaked loudly. "Son," the chief said softly. Yes, sir," Leo squeaked. "Is this real lemon or that powder stuff?" Leo blinked. "Real lemons. We squeezed them. It hurt my hands." A tiny, almost imperceptible smile twitched at the corner of the chief's mustache. "Good. The powder stuff gives me heartburn." He reached into his back pocket, pulled out a worn leather wallet, and flipped it open. He extracted a crisp $20 bill and laid it flat on the card table, right next to the cigar box. "I'm parched," Chief Miller said, standing back up. "I'll take a cup. Keep the change. Saturn's a long way away. You're going to need the funds." The silence that followed was absolute. For a few seconds, the only sound on our block was the low, rhythmic idle of a delivery truck a street over, and the faint clinking of ice as Leo, his hands shaking violently, picked up the plastic pitcher. He didn't know how to process a $20 bill. To a 9-year-old in 2026, a 20 might as well be a gold brick. He poured the lemonade with the agonizing care of a bomb squad technician handling nitroglycerin. He filled a clear plastic cup to the very brim, a few drops spilling over his knuckles, and offered it to the chief. Chief Miller took it. He didn't break eye contact with Brenda. Brenda looked like a computer trying to process a fatal error. Her mouth was open, hanging slack. Her eyes darted from the crisp 20 sitting on the cardboard table to the chief's impassive face. The power dynamic of Red Creek Estates, a hierarchy she had spent 5 years ruthlessly building through intimidation and bylaws, was currently dissolving in a plastic cup of sugar water. "Thank you, son," Chief Miller said. He took a long, slow drink. He didn't just sip it. He drained half the cup in one pull, his Adam's apple bobbing. He lowered the cup and exhaled a heavy breath. "Tart. That hits the spot." "Greg." Brenda's voice was barely a whisper, choked with a potent mixture of disbelief and pure, unadulterated rage. Then the whisper shattered. She stepped forward, jabbing her clipboard toward him. What are you doing? I called you here to enforce the law. You are openly endorsing a municipal violation. Chief Miller slowly turned to face her. The weary grandfather persona vanished, replaced instantly by the rigid posture of a man who had spent 30 years dealing with domestic disputes, bar fights, and municipal headaches. I am enforcing the law, Brenda, he said, his voice stripped of any warmth. The actual law, state statutes, city ordinances, the things I swore an oath to uphold, not your neighborhood club rules. It is a health hazard, she shrieked. The manicured veneer was entirely gone now. Her face was dark red, veins pushing against the thin skin of her neck. He doesn't have a permit. I'm going to call the mayor. I'm going to the city council. You can't just ignore a citizen's complaint because you think a child is cute. You're right, Chief Miller said calmly. I don't ignore valid complaints. But let me explain something to you about city resources. It costs the taxpayers roughly $150 every time I dispatch a cruiser. I have actual emergencies happening right now. I have a domestic violence call on the east side that my officers are handling while I am standing here talking to you about lemons. He took another step toward her. He didn't raise his voice, but the sheer weight of his presence made Brenda instinctively take a step back. If you ever, the chief continued, pointing a thick, calloused finger at her clipboard, use the emergency dispatch line again to settle a petty neighborhood grievance, I will not write him a ticket. I will write you a citation for misuse of the 911 system. It's a misdemeanor, carries a $500 fine and mandatory court appearance. Do we understand each other? The neighborhood had stopped pretending not to watch. Dave was standing openly on his lawn now, holding his dog's leash, his jaw slightly dropped. An older couple walking their bikes had stopped on the sidewalk across the street. The curtain in the window of the house across from ours was pulled back, a shadowy figure standing behind the glass. Brenda looked around. She saw the audience. She saw that she wasn't the victor here, she was the spectacle. Her lips trembled. She looked back at me, her eyes narrowing into two venomous slits. The embarrassment was instantly converting into a deep, vindictive hatred. "This isn't over, Tom," she hissed, entirely ignoring the chief now. "The police don't run the HOA, the board does. You think you're above the rules? You think you can just do whatever you want?" "Brenda, go home," I said quietly. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a hollow, exhausting headache. "Just go sit in the air conditioning." She didn't say another word. She spun around, her orthopedic sandals squeaking furiously against the asphalt, and power walked back to her house. She didn't look left or right. She marched up her driveway, went through her front door, and slammed it so hard I heard the heavy thud echo down the street. Chief Miller finished his lemonade. He crushed the plastic cup in his large hand and tossed it into the trash bag taped to the table. "Good lemonade, Leo," he said, looking down at my son. "Keep the change. Put it toward the telescope." "Thank you, sir," Leo breathed, still staring at the $20 bill as if it might spontaneously combust. The chief looked at me. The hardness in his eyes softened back into profound exhaustion. "She's going to make your life hell, you know." "I know," I said, but I wasn't going to let her bully him. Chief Miller nodded slowly. "Good. A man's home is his castle, even if the castle is painted Navajo white and regulated by a committee." He tapped the hood of his cruiser, opened the door, and climbed back into the heavy SUV. As the police cruiser pulled away, rolling slowly down the street, Dave walked over from his yard. He looked at the 20 on the table, then at me. "Tom," Dave said, shaking his head, "you just poked the bear. No, you didn't poke it. You shot it with a flare gun." "I didn't do anything, Dave. She brought the cops." "Yeah, well," Dave sighed, looking nervously toward Brenda's house. "Brenda doesn't lose. She just weaponizes the paperwork. Watch your six." I looked down at Leo. He was carefully placing the $20 bill under the stack of ones and quarters in his cigar box, a massive, triumphant grin spreading across his face. For that afternoon, it was worth it. We stayed out until 3 o'clock. Traffic picked up. The story of the chief buying lemonade had apparently ripped through the local Facebook groups, because suddenly we had a line. People drove over from the next subdivision. A guy on a riding lawnmower pulled up and bought 3 cups. By the time we folded the table, Leo had made $84. He was halfway to Saturn. But Dave was right. Brenda didn't lose. She just retreated to her bunker to draft new battle plans. Sunday was quiet. It was a tense, holding breath kind of quiet. I mowed the lawn. I edged the driveway. I made sure the trash cans were locked perfectly behind the wooden privacy fence. I spent an hour scrubbing a tiny, almost invisible spot of tree sap off the vinyl siding of my house. I was preparing for a siege. My wife, Sarah, thought I was being paranoid. She works as a physical therapist, spending her days helping people recover from knee replacements and stroke damage. She deals in real, tangible problems. To her, neighborhood drama was a frivolous waste of energy. She was embarrassed, Tom, Sarah said on Sunday night, standing in the kitchen as we cleaned up from dinner. She threw a tantrum, the cops put her in her place, and it's over. She's not going to risk looking crazy again. You don't understand these people, Sarah, I replied, loading plates into the dishwasher. Power is the only currency they have. Her entire identity is tied up in that clipboard. We humiliated her in front of the whole street. She humiliated herself, Sarah corrected. To us, yes. To her, we challenged the natural order of the universe. She's going to hit back. Monday morning proved me right. I work from home most days, operating out of a converted spare bedroom on the second floor. Around 10:30, I saw the mail truck pull up to our clustered mailbox at the end of the street. Rick, our mail carrier, sorted the letters. But instead of getting back in his truck, he started walking up my driveway. He had a thick, rigid cardboard envelope in his hand. It was bright green. Certified mail. I met him at the front door before he could ring the bell. Rick looked apologetic. He handed me a small electronic pad and a plastic stylus. Sign here, Tom, he murmured, not quite meeting my eyes. What is it, Rick? It's from the management company. The lawyers that represent the HOA board. Rick lowered his voice, even though we were the only ones around. I delivered 2 more of these to people on the next block today. Brenda is on a warpath. She was walking the neighborhood at 6 this morning with a tape measure. I signed the screen, took the green envelope, and went back inside. I sat at the kitchen island and used a butter knife to slice the thick cardboard open. Inside was a stack of paper, held together by a heavy black binder clip. The letterhead belonged to a law firm, downtown. Sterling, Hayes, and Partners. It wasn't just one citation. It was a carpet bombing. I spread the papers out on the granite counter. Notice of violation 1. Unauthorized commercial structure and unpermitted business operation. Original fine, $50. Penalty for non-compliance within 15 minutes. $50. Total, $100. Notice of violation 2. Improper lawn maintenance. Section 3. Paragraph C dictates turf grass shall not exceed 3.0 inches in height. Measurement taken at 6:15 a.m. on August 15th indicates grass height of 3.25 inches. Fine, $75. I stared at that one. I had mowed the lawn yesterday. She must have found a single rogue blade of fescue near the sprinkler head that the mower had missed. Notice of violation 3. Unauthorized exterior modifications. Window treatments on front-facing second-story elevation do not conform to approved aesthetic guidelines. Blinds are drawn at irregular angles, creating a disrupted visual facade. Fine, $50. Notice of violation 4. Improper storage of refuse receptacles. Trash bin is visible from the street right of way. Fine, $50. I walked to the front window and looked out. The side gate was closed. If you stood exactly at the property line and leaned sharply to the left, peering through a 1/4-inch gap between the fence pickets, you could see a sliver of the blue recycling bin. There were 3 more violations. A tiny crack in the concrete of the driveway, $50. A garden hose left curled next to the spigot instead of being wound on a reel, $50. Total fines levied, $425. At the bottom of the last page, printed in bold, red ink, was a warning. Failure to remit payment in full within 14 days will result in additional late fees, suspension of community privileges, including pool access, and the placement of a lien upon the property located at 402 Red Creek Drive. A lien. They were threatening to put a legal hold on my house over a garden hose and a lemonade stand. I sat there in the quiet house, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I didn't feel angry at first. I felt a cold, suffocating weight on my chest. This is how they win. They don't win by being right. They win by burying you in paperwork, by weaponizing the fine print that you signed when you bought the house, assuming reasonable people would apply reasonable enforcement. But Brenda wasn't reasonable. She was an apex predator in a beige ecosystem. When Sarah got home that evening, I showed her the papers. She read through them slowly, still wearing her scrubs. The pragmatic, dismissive attitude from Sunday night vanished, replaced by a quiet, simmering fury. 3.25 inches, Sarah read aloud, her voice flat. She measured our grass with a ruler. It's a declaration of war, I said. She wants to drain us financially until we apologize and grovel, or until we move. We are not paying this, Sarah said, dropping the papers onto the counter. This is extortion. We'll go to the next board meeting. We'll appeal it. The board is Brenda, an 80-year-old woman who falls asleep during roll call, and a guy who travels for work and never shows up, I reminded her. Brenda is the appeal process. Just then, the back door opened. Leo walked in from the yard, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He had been at a friend's house after school. He looked tired, his face streaked with dirt, but he was carrying his plastic cigar box tucked under his arm, like a football. He stopped when he saw our faces. Kids have a radar for adult stress. The air in the kitchen was thick with it. What's wrong? Leo asked, his eyes darting between me and Sarah. He noticed the stack of papers on the counter. Is that from school? Nobody, I said, forcing a smile that felt tight and fake on my face. Just boring house stuff. Bills. Leo walked closer. He wasn't buying it. He looked at the heavy black binder clip, the red ink, the sheer volume of the paper. Then he looked at the top page. He was a smart kid. He read at a 5th grade level. I saw his eyes track across the words, unauthorized commercial structure, original fine, $50. His face crumpled. The proud, entrepreneurial glow that had sustained him since Saturday vanished, replaced by a crushing, immediate guilt. It's the lemonade stand, Leo whispered. His voice wavered. She fined you because of me. Leo, no. Sarah stepped forward, reaching for him. This isn't your fault. This is just a crazy neighbor being mean. Leo backed away from her hand, looking down at his cigar box. He set it down gently on the kitchen island, right next to the stack of legal threats. He popped the plastic latch. Inside, the $1 bills were neatly stacked, weighed down by the 20 from Chief Miller and a handful of quarters. How much is it? Leo asked, his voice thick with unshed tears. Leo, stop, I said, stepping toward him. You are not paying this. This is my fight, not yours. How much? He demanded, looking up at me, his chin trembling. I have $84. I can give it to you. I don't need the telescope. I don't want you to be in trouble. Looking at my son, willing to surrender his hard-earned money to appease a tyrant who had terrorized him, broke something fundamental inside me. The fear of the lien, the stress of the bureaucracy, the desire to just keep the peace. It all burned away, leaving behind a sharp, brilliant clarity. I reached out and closed the lid of his cigar box. I pushed it back toward him. Keep your money, Leo, I said softly, but with a finality that made him blink. You earned that. You're going to buy that telescope, and we're going to set it up in the middle of the driveway. I turned to Sarah. She was looking at me, her eyes flashing with the exact same resolve I felt in my gut. Are we paying it? She asked me. No, I said. I picked up the stack of violations and threw them into the trash can. We're not paying a dime. If Brenda wants a war, we're going to give her a war, and we're going to salt the earth. There is a distinct difference between fighting a war and throwing a tantrum. A tantrum is loud, messy, and brief. A war is fought with logistics, patience, and a horrifying amount of paperwork. I didn't yell at Brenda. I didn't confront her in the street. I didn't even acknowledge the green certified envelopes that continued to arrive in my mailbox every 3 days, adding arbitrary fines to my growing ledger. Instead, I drove to the local office supply store and bought a heavy-duty laser printer, 2 reams of paper, and a box of highlighters. When you buy a home in a deed-restricted community, you are handed a thick, intimidating document called the Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, or CC&Rs. Most people toss it in a drawer with their mortgage closing documents and never look at it again. I printed all 142 pages. I sat at my kitchen table for 3 nights straight, fueled by black coffee and a quiet, burning spite. If Brenda wanted to play by the rules, we were going to play by all of them. The thing about HOA bylaws is that they are written by lawyers who are paid by the word, designed to cover every possible infraction a human being could commit on a quarter-acre plot of land. They are so broad and so restrictive that it is mathematically impossible to be in compliance with all of them simultaneously. I started taking walks every evening, just as the sun began to dip below the roof lines, casting long shadows over the beige houses. I walked my dog. I didn't bring a tape measure. That would be obvious. I used my iPhone. I took pictures of the neighborhood. I cataloged every infraction. House 402, unapproved garden gnome hidden in the hydrangeas, violation of Section 8, Item D, non-standard yard ornamentation. House 415, driveway oil stain exceeding 4 inches in diameter, violation of Section 12, Item A, concrete maintenance. House 428, holiday lights still strung around the porch columns, and it was mid-August. Violation of Section 5, Item C, seasonal decor limitations. But I didn't care about those houses. I cared about the board members. I zeroed in on Brenda's property. Her lawn was immaculate. Her paint was fresh. But Brenda had a secret. Last summer, she had hired a crew to build a massive cedar frame outdoor kitchen and pergola in her backyard. It was a beautiful structure, complete with a built-in gas grill, a stone fire pit, and electrical wiring for outdoor televisions. The neighborhood had whispered about how much it cost. I looked up Section 15 of our bylaws. Structural additions and municipal easements. Any permanent structure exceeding 100 square feet requires a formal variance from the Architectural Control Committee, as well as copies of all approved municipal city permits. I logged onto the County Appraisal District's public website. I pulled the property lines and the utility easement maps for Red Creek Estates. I smiled. It was a cold, predatory smile. At midnight on Thursday, there was a soft knock at my back door. I opened it to find Dave, my next-door neighbor. He was wearing dark sweatpants and a black hoodie, looking around nervously, as if he were smuggling contraband over a border. He slipped inside. I handed him a beer. "You're insane, Tom," Dave whispered, standing in my kitchen. "Brenda sent a guy to measure my roof shingles yesterday. She knows I bought a cup of lemonade." "She's terrified of losing control, Dave," I said, sliding a thick manila folder across the granite island. "Look at this." Dave opened the folder. Inside were the county plat maps, satellite imagery of Brenda's backyard, and a highlighted copy of the city's municipal zoning code. "What am I looking at?" Dave asked, squinting at the maps. "Brenda's outdoor kitchen," I explained, tapping the paper. "It's built directly over the municipal sewer easement. The city requires a 10-foot setback from the property line for any permanent structure over an easement. She built it 2 feet from the fence." Dave stared at the paper. He took a slow sip of his beer. "Are you telling me, I'm telling you she never pulled city permits," I said, "because if she applied for permits, the city would have denied them due to the easement, and she never got a variance from the HOA, because she is the HOA, and she bypassed her own rules. She has an illegal, unpermitted $40,000 structure in her backyard." Dave looked up at me. The fear in his eyes was slowly being replaced by a dangerous, glittering excitement. "If the city finds out, the city code enforcement office can mandate an immediate demolition at the homeowner's expense," I said softly. "Tom," Dave breathed out, "you didn't just find a skeleton in her closet, you found a nuke. I need your help," I told him. "I can't just drop this on her in private. She'll bury it. I need to do it at the quarterly board meeting on Tuesday, but she runs the meetings. She'll try to cut my microphone." I need numbers. I need you to talk to the neighbors. Dave nodded slowly. The ones she's fined. All of them, I said. Over the next 4 days, a quiet insurgency spread through Red Creek Estates. There were no mass emails, no posts on the neighborhood Facebook group. It was done in garages, over backyard fences, in the aisles of the local grocery store. Dave was a master networker. He collected grievances like trading cards. Every person Brenda had bullied, every family she had harassed over a slightly crooked mailbox or a faded set of shutters was quietly handed a proxy voting form. By Tuesday evening, the trap was set. The Red Creek Community Center smelled faintly of chlorine from the adjacent pool and heavily of stale coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly, sterile glow over the rows of metal folding chairs. Usually, these quarterly meetings were attended by Brenda, the property manager, and maybe 2 retirees who had nothing better to do. When Sarah and I walked through the double doors at 6:55 p.m., the room was packed. There were at least 60 people sitting in the folding chairs. The low hum of their murmuring stopped for a fraction of a second as we entered, then resumed with a different, charged energy. Brenda sat at the long plastic folding table at the front of the room. She wore a sharp navy blazer over a crisp white blouse. Her clipboard was resting perfectly parallel to the edge of the table. To her left sat the property manager, a nervous-looking man in a cheap suit, frantically shuffling papers. Brenda looked at the crowd. She didn't look intimidated. She looked annoyed. At exactly 7 p.m., she picked up a wooden gavel and struck a small-sounding block. Crack. "Call this meeting of the Red Creek Estates Homeowners Association to order," Brenda announced, her voice amplified by a screechy PA system. "We have a packed agenda tonight, mostly regarding delinquent fine collections and increased enforcement protocols. We will limit the open forum to 3 minutes per resident at the end of the session." "Actually, Brenda," I said. I stood up from my chair in the 3rd row. I didn't yell. I projected. I used the voice I used in corporate pitch meetings when the client was losing focus. Brenda's eyes snapped to me. Her lips thinned into a razor-sharp line. "Tom, you are out of order. Sit down until the open forum. I am bringing forward an emergency motion for a vote of no confidence regarding the current board presidency, citing gross violations of the CC&Rs and municipal law," I said, stepping out into the center aisle. The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the vending machine in the hallway. Brenda let out a short, sharp laugh. "You don't have the authority to call a motion, Tom, and you are currently in bad standing with the association due to unpaid fines. You don't even have voting rights tonight." "My fines," I said, walking slowly toward the front table, carrying a heavy stack of manila envelopes, "are actively in dispute. Under state property law, a homeowner retains voting rights during an active written dispute period, which your property manager received via certified mail this morning." I looked at the nervous man in the cheap suit. He swallowed hard and nodded meekly at Brenda. Brenda's face flushed pink. "Fine. What is this nonsense? Are you really going to throw a tantrum over a lemonade stand in front of the whole neighborhood?" "No," I said, stopping a few feet from her table. "I'm here to talk about your backyard." I turned to the crowd. Dave was in the front row. He stood up and began passing the manila envelopes down the aisles. "In the packets being distributed to you," I said to the room, "you will find page 42 of our CC&Rs. It explicitly mandates that all permanent structures require an approved variance from the Architectural Committee. It also mandates compliance with all city building codes." I turned back to Brenda. The smugness was starting to slide off her face, replaced by a rigid, frantic calculation. "Brenda," I said, my voice ringing clearly in the quiet room, "can you provide the Architectural Committee's written approval for the 400-square-foot outdoor kitchen and pergola you constructed last August?" She gripped the edge of the table. "That was handled internally. It is a grandfathered structure." "It's not," I replied, pulling the satellite map from my own folder and dropping it onto the table in front of her. "I checked the minutes of every board meeting for the last 3 years. No variance was ever requested or approved. More importantly, I checked with the city." I leaned in, resting my hands on the plastic table. I dropped my voice just enough so that she was the only one who could hear the absolute venom in it. You build a $40,000 kitchen directly over the municipal sewer easement, Brenda. You have no permits. I have the forms filled out and ready to submit to the city code enforcement office tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. They will send a backhoe to tear it down, and they will bill you for the demolition. Brenda stared at the satellite photo. Her hands began to shake. The color drained completely from her face, leaving her looking old, frail, and suddenly very small in her sharp navy blazer. You wouldn't, she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't care, I whispered back. I didn't care about the rules. I didn't care about your clipboard. I just wanted my kid to sell some lemonade. But you brought the police to my house to scare my 9-year-old son. You crossed the line. So now we are enforcing the rules. To the letter. I stood up straight, turning my back on her and facing the stunned room. According to the bylaws, I announced to the crowd, any board member found in material breach of the covenants is subject to immediate removal via a majority vote of the present quorum. I motioned to remove Brenda from the board of directors, effective immediately. Dave shot out of his chair. I second the motion. All in favor, I asked. It wasn't a wave of hands. It was an explosion. 60 hands shot into the air. People didn't just raise their hands. They thrust them up with years of pent-up frustration and vindicated anger. The vote was unanimous. I turned back to Brenda. She was staring blankly at the forest of raised hands. Her kingdom was gone. The authority she wielded like a club had been stripped away in less than 5 minutes. She stood up slowly. She didn't say a word. She didn't take her clipboard. She picked up her purse, walked round the plastic table, and walked down the center aisle. The crowd parted for her in total silence. The heavy double doors swung shut behind her with a dull thud. The property manager leaned toward his microphone, sweating profusely. The motion passes. The position of president is vacant. I walked back to my seat next to Sarah. She reached out and squeezed my hand under the folding chair. Her grip was tight, warm, and fiercely proud. The rest of the meeting was a blur. We elected Dave as the interim president. His first official act, voted on and passed within 3 minutes, was a blanket amnesty for all pending fines related to lawn height, driveway chalk, and unlicensed beverage sales. When we finally walked out of the community center, the night air felt different. It wasn't just the break in the humidity. The suffocating, paranoid tension that had hung over Red Creek Estates was gone. 2 weeks later, a massive, heavy cardboard box arrived on our front porch. Leo practically vibrated with excitement as I used a box cutter to slice through the packing tape. We spent an hour assembling the tripod, attaching the heavy counterweights, and mounting the optical tube. It wasn't a cheap plastic toy. It was a serious, beautiful piece of machinery, paid for by $84 of lemonade money, a lot of chores, and a minor neighborhood revolution. We carried it out to the driveway just after 9 p.m. The sky was perfectly clear, a deep, bruised purple fading into black. I adjusted the finder scope, dialing in the coordinates. I stepped back. Okay, buddy, take a look. Leo stepped up to the eyepiece. He closed one eye and squinted through the glass. He stood perfectly still for a long time. Down the street, I could see Brenda's house. Her porch light was off. She hadn't been seen walking the neighborhood with her clipboard since the meeting. There were rumors she was packing, getting ready to list the house before the city inspector could knock on her door. I didn't know, and I didn't care. Dad, Leo whispered, his voice full of pure, unfiltered awe. Do you see it? I asked. He pulled his head back from the eyepiece and looked up at me, his face glowing in the dim light of the street lamps. I see the rings, he said, smiling a massive, gap-toothed smile. I can actually see the rings. I put my arm around his shoulders, pulling him close, looking up into the vast, unregulated expanse of the sky. I told you, I said softly. You earned it. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button to support real, grounded storytelling. We all know a Brenda, and standing up to neighborhood bullies takes courage, and sometimes a lot of paperwork. Share this with a friend who's survived the trenches of an HOA. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deeply human, unapologetic stories every single week. Drop a comment below. What's the craziest rule your neighborhood ever tried to enforce? Your story might just be our next video. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. See you next time.